Hi, I'm Beth, creator of dryitcanit.com. I like to share with you tricks, tips, and how-tos for dehydrating food, canning food, as well as share original recipes that I've created. Today I want to talk about making and canning, water bath canning actually, apple pie filling. It's fall where I'm at currently at the time I'm recording this. Apples are in season and there's nothing better than having apples on hand to make an apple pie or apple crisp or some other delicious treat. So I'm going to go ahead and get my apples washed up and we're going to get started. The first thing I'm actually going to do is get my liquid going. A lot of people do the apples first. I just prefer to do the liquid first. Now I am playing with a new recipe today and I might, after I taste it, end up adjusting it for the final. So I'm going to tell you what I'm doing now, but you might want to go all the way to the end so that you know if I ended up adjusting this after I tasted it once it's done. So I'm starting with 1.5 cups of sugar. My goal here is going to be to make about 12 cups of apples, so that's kind of the proportion, but you'll be able to adjust the recipe. It's a 1/2 cup measurer. So 1.5 cups of sugar. Sugar obviously is a sweetener, but it's also a preservative, so you know, sugar is a good thing to have in here. Then I'm going to add, I like cinnamon, so I'm going to add a tablespoon of cinnamon, like so. Again, good amount of apples, and it's fall, so you have to have cinnamon, right? And then I'm going to add a little bit of nutmeg. Nutmeg can go a long way, so I'm only going to use 1/2 teaspoon to start. And again, I might decide to adjust this afterwards, but that's where I'm starting with. Get that hole in there. But I think, you know, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, they all go together. You can buy something called apple pie filling where your spices are mixed. You can use that. If you don't like a lot of cinnamon, use less. If you like more, use more. So anyway, I've just got those ingredients here. To this, I'm going to add 3 cups of water, and then I'm going to bring this to a boil. And then I'm going to shut off the heat, and I'm going to prep my apples. So stay tuned as I get ready to do the next step. So when I prep my apples, I go through them and make sure that there are no bad apples. If there's just a small spot that's bad, I go ahead and prep them, and then I remove that bad spot. When I'm doing a lot of apples, I tend to want to automate things, so I next go ahead and I peel my apples. I do use an automated peeler just because it's a lot quicker. I still have to remove the ends off of it, and then I use an automatic tool to cut them too, just so I get nice even pieces. So this is a really nice unit to have. I usually still have to go through the bottom, but I can just remove the rest of the skin with the turn of a knife. It doesn't really do the top or the bottom of them. I suppose if I set this up differently, maybe it would, but it's fine the way it is. And it's quicker than, for me anyway, for peeling them individually. Then I just use a coring tool. I go down through the middle of the apple and put the apple into the bowl. Usually I don't miss the bowl like this. Then I have my core, and I just toss that. So this is how I prep my apples when I have a number of them. Now, I put my apples in water with a little bit of lemon juice. Technically, you really wouldn't have to do that because the apples are going to oxidize and they're going to get brown otherwise, but they're going to be covered with the cinnamon, so you're not really going to notice that anyway. In the meantime, I have my water, my sugar, and my spices coming to a boil. Once that gets to a boil, I'm going to turn that down to simmer, and I'm going to simmer that for 3 to 5 minutes, and then I'm going to shut that off until I'm done prepping the rest of my apples. So stay tuned. There are 2 more things I'm going to be adding to that mixture before I get ready to can these. I have about 12 cups of sliced apples in my pot with the water, the sugar, the cinnamon, and the nutmeg. To that, I added 1 teaspoon of vanilla and 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring this liquid to a boil. I'm going to simmer it and keep the apples. I'm going to keep stirring them, and I want to cook them for about 3 to 5 minutes. If you don't cook your apples, you're really going to have floaters, and you're not going to get the same quality when you're done. So that's really what I'm going to focus on next before putting them in the jars. To see if your pot of apples is boiling, just clear a spot in the middle and then wait and see if it's boiling. So this is getting really close, but it's just coming to a boil now. You can see the bubbles. So that's when I'll start the timing, and I'll do 3 minutes because these pieces are pretty small. My apples have cooked for 3 minutes. They were relatively small pieces, so I didn't opt for the 5 minutes. Let's talk for a minute about the thickener. You want to use clear gel to thicken your pie filling. Some people will use flour, some people will use cornstarch. Those aren't approved methods. I'm not saying you shouldn't use them. Personally, I just am more comfortable with the clear gel. There's two kinds of clear gel. You have the instant kind, which is what I have, and the cook type. The cook type is really the best for this, and probably something you're going to buy more often than not if you're going to buy this. And if you're going to use the cook type, you want to add 1/2 cup of the instant gel cook type when you're mixing your flour, your sugar and your spices together, and then you're adding your water. So you're cooking that right into it. Because I only have the instant type, it works totally differently. It literally thickens instantly. So what I did with this, because I've worked with it for a while, is I used 1/3 cup. I put that into a 2 cup measuring cup, and then I added water to kind of stir it up to get the bumps out, and then I slowly kept adding water till it was smooth. I then used an immersion blender to make sure that I had all of the clumps out of it, and then I slowly added that into my hot liquid. Unfortunately, my camera had run out of battery at that time, so I couldn't record that. So anyway, clear gel is what I recommend for your thickener on that. So we're ready to go ahead and can this up. I am going to go ahead and get my jars out, and I need to get my grabber, so hang on 1 second. All right, so my jars are preheated, and I have pints. And again, you want to preheat your jars according to the directions in your canner. And then what I'm going to do is simply fill these up to 1-inch headspace. And once they're filled, I'm going to wipe them off. I'm going to wipe them off with a wet rag, and then I'm going to water bath these for 25 minutes. Now you may need to adjust that for your altitude, but that is the time that I'm going to use. So I'm going to fill it up to the 1-inch mark. I'm going to fill up each of my jars. As a reminder, the 1-inch mark is this lower band. You can see that I actually have a little bit more, or a little bit less. I guess how it depends on what you want. I have a little bit more room, but I have filled a little bit less than I should. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to wipe my rims off with a clean towel. I'm going to add my lid. I'm going to put my band on finger tight. It's going to go into the pressure canner. That's what I'm going to do with all of my jars. So I'll be back when all of that's finished. My jars of apple pie filling are now in my canner, and I'm water bathing them for 25 minutes. You're going to want to adjust that for your altitude and for the directions on your canner. But I filled my jars, I debubbled them, I wiped off the top of the jars, added my lids, and then put my screw bands on finger tight. Now, I did adjust the recipe a little bit. I think I'm going to pull the nutmeg back a little bit, and I did add an extra teaspoon of cinnamon. So I'm going to get this recipe printed out, and I'll provide a link for you for that. Once these jars are finished, I'm going to put them on the counter, and I'm going to let them rest for 12 to 24 hours. When you water bathe your product, you want to add hot water to your canner, and you want that water to be over the top of your jars by about 1 inch. But again, follow the directions in your canner. Now, frankly, I was not real happy with the quality of the apples. We usually get them from an apple orchard, and they're usually really good. But this year they're just a little bit soft and they're small. I think that had to do with the weather this year. It may have been that maybe I should have put them in the garage where it was a little bit cooler instead of in the basement. So normally I would have saved all my skins and I would have dehydrated those, then powdered them and used those for flavoring. Because the rest of my apples are a little bit soft, I'm actually going to clean those up and I'm going to slice them. I'm going to dehydrate them because we're going to be traveling in the next couple of days, and I think it's more important to save the apples than the skins. So anyway, I will be back tomorrow morning once these are completely done and completely cooled, and we'll wrap this up. Apple pie filling is all sealed and good to go. I did end up with about 4.5 pints. We had a 1/2 pint yesterday, and I had some this morning also, but it is delicious. The apples still have a nice texture. You can taste the sweetness of the apple, but also the sweetness of the syrup, the cinnamon, hint of lemon, which is great. The jar's all sealed really well. I'm really happy with this. So I did adjust the recipe a little bit after tasting it from what I did on the video. I'll have a link below to the recipe. The other thing I did, which was kind of interesting, is I used my data logger to log the results of this. And I'll give you a close-up on this if you're interested, because I never used the data logger before when I did water bathing. So if you want to see what that looks like, stay tuned. Otherwise, thanks for watching the video. Happy canning. The data logger will be the last part of this. Here's the data from the data logger for the apple pie filling. Again, we have the temperature on this side and the times are on the bottom. And you can water bath things that are acidic. So generally, it's going to be fruits. And the reason you can do that is because botulism can't grow in acid foods. But you also want your temperatures to be above that 140 and 180 degree mark, because that kills off the bacteria and the yeasts. Well, here's the 180 degree mark. And as you can see, we had a long time above that. And in fact, we got above the 200 degree mark even. So 26 minutes above 200 degrees. Now that does not kill the botulism toxins. That has to be above 240 degrees. But botulism does not grow in sugar environments, and this pie filling definitely has sugar and is a sugar environment, as well as it being acidic. So that's the data if you're interested. Again, please consider a thumbs up or subscribing to the channel, and thanks for watching.